My sister asked me to accompany her for a prenatal checkup, and I readily agreed. However, a barrage of messages suddenly floated before my eyes. "Oh dear, please do not go. Your sister has orchestrated an accident to befall you, and in doing so, you may inadvertently cause her to fall down the stairs, resulting in a miscarriage. Your sister should have undergone an abortion due to her pregnancy complications, but if she does, it will become exceedingly difficult for her to conceive again in her lifetime. She needs to find someone naive enough to bear the burden of her lifelong infertility. If you go, you will be responsible for the life of that unborn child. Do not go. Safeguard the inheritance your grandmother bestowed upon you. Your mother and sister are in cahoots. They plan to ensnare you for life with the life of her unborn child. You will be responsible for earning a living while they merely focus on their beauty." Consequently, I sent my sister's medical records to her future mother-in-law. My sister, Xin Lian, is a burden brought by my mother, yet my father has always treated her as his own. Our bond has remained exceptionally close. Thus, when she called to ask me to accompany her for a prenatal checkup tomorrow, I agreed without a moment's hesitation. However, once I hung up the phone, a cascade of comments flooded my mind. I was taken aback, unable to comprehend how my sister, who has always cared for me, could act in such a manner. To be fair, my sister has indeed treated me very well. Every year on my birthday, she gifts me exquisite clothing, urging me to abandon my plain wardrobe. When I was bullied by academic underachievers, she confronted and reprimanded them on my behalf, avenging me, after my custom watch for my father was stolen during my coming-of-age ceremony. She purchased a new one to lift my spirits. I suspected that these comments were maliciously intended to sow discord between my sister and me. So I dismissed them and returned to my work responsibilities. Last year, my father passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack, and my grandmother, unable to bear the loss of her son, also departed this world earlier this year. Having just graduated from university, I found myself thrust into the responsibility of managing my grandmother's chain of hotels, a task that kept me thoroughly occupied. Fortunately, having spent every summer and winter vacation with my grandmother since I was 18, I adapted quickly to the demands of the business. As I diligently worked, the comments seemed to sense my thoughts and surged forth with even greater intensity. "Oh dear, your sister does not care for you at all. The clothes she bought you were merely cast-offs she disliked. Her intervention against the bullies was because they had paid her off to torment you. She is envious because your grandmother designated you as the heir, while excluding her from the company. The customized watch your father gifted you was stolen, and your sister bought you a cheap one to placate you because the real watch was stolen by her. She sold it on the black market for $1 million. At this point, I could no longer remain seated. A memory surfaced the day after I lost my watch. I overheard my sister whispering to my mother in the kitchen, mentioning an income of $1 million. Curious, I had inquired about her sudden wealth, and she claimed it was from investing in Bitcoin. I knew little about Bitcoin, only that it was a high-risk investment, so I cautioned her to take profits when she could. After that, I heard nothing more about her financial windfall, leading me to believe she had heeded my advice and ceased trading. I even felt a sense of pride, thinking I had influenced her decisions. However, if the comments were true, I had been a fool. After some contemplation, I contacted a private investigator to help me uncover my sister's medical history and the source of her income for years prior. Before the end of the workday, the investigator provided me with a response. My sister, Xin Lian, had been diagnosed with a fetal demise last week, and the doctor recommended a termination within a week. At most 2. Her income of $1 million 4 years ago stemmed from the most notorious underground exchange. The investigator even uncovered that the item sold to the underground exchange was a women's watch. This revelation shattered my illusions. I realized I had been living in a web of my sister's deceit. The comments emerged once more, adding insult to injury. "Oh dear. Not only your sister, but even your mother is a master of deception. Your father remained oblivious until his death. Your mother did not divorce due to her ex-husband's infidelity. She was the one who entered as a mistress. After drugging him, she bore your sister, and when he refused to acknowledge them, she had to marry your father, the unsuspecting fool. Your mother never loved your father. Her affections were all an act. Her heart belonged to her so-called ex-husband, her first love. Your mother sees your father merely as a cash machine, wanting to live like a noblewoman, flaunting her life in front of her ex's legitimate wife for her own sense of achievement. Dear, Do not follow in your father's footsteps. Do not allow your mother and sister to manipulate you further. Consequently, I messaged the investigator again, asking him to verify my mother's romantic history and my sister's lineage. After work, instead of returning to the villa as usual, I went to a nearby flat used for my lunch breaks. My mother called, inquiring why I had not yet returned home. I informed her I was meeting a client. My mother, a touch anxious, asked if I would still accompany my sister for the checkup tomorrow, as she could not attend due to an injury. She insisted that I must not let my sister go alone, emphasizing that this child was crucial to my sister's prospects with a Sioux family. Shun Lian was pregnant out of wedlock, and her future in-laws were the esteemed Sioux group in Haicheng. The matriarch, Su Ming, had little regard for Shun Lian, considering her background dubious and her character vain. Su Ming stipulated that unless my sister bore a son, her son would not be permitted to marry her. Furthermore, to undermine their relationship, she had transferred her son to their South American branch. Rest assured, mother, I have fulfilled every promise made to you and my sister. I reassured her, dispelling her concerns with a single statement. After hanging up, the investigator responded, confirming that all the comments were indeed true. My mother's first love was already married, which fueled her resentment. After drugging him, she forced him into a situation that resulted in Shun Lian's conception. She had pressured her former lover to divorce, but he and his wife stood resolute, ultimately driving her away. After an extended period of turmoil, she ended up without any financial support for my sister and resorted to a similar method with my father, coercing him into marriage. These details were common knowledge among her social circle, which explained why she never allowed me or my father to interact with her friends. It was no wonder my grandmother had always disapproved of my mother. She likely knew the truth. My father, being naive, had fallen victim to my mother's manipulations, and my grandmother was powerless to intervene. Nonetheless, now that I was aware, I would not allow myself to be manipulated by my mother and sister. Serving as a form of retribution for my grandmother, I anonymously forwarded the medical records from the investigator to Su Ming. Based on my understanding of Su Ming, upon receiving the documents, she would undoubtedly rush to our villa to confront us. I accessed the surveillance system of our villa, which had been installed 2 years prior when my mother hired a new housekeeper. To prevent the housekeeper from slacking off or stealing, my mother had insisted on the monitoring system. After observing the new housekeeper for a while, I found her reliable, leading to the camera being neglected. My mother had likely forgotten about its existence, never suspecting I would engage in such idle voyeurism. Before Su Ming arrived, I witnessed my mother and sister, embodying the essence of affluent ladies, slicing into steak. Mom, can the person you arranged ensure that everything goes smoothly? My sister inquired. My mother elegantly placed a piece of steak in her mouth, assuring her, do not worry. We have hired an expert in staging accidents. When your sister collides with her, she will fall against you. You'll simply need to lean back a little, and she will tumble down the stairs with you. Just take some medication beforehand. Even if there are no injuries, you will bleed, making the need for the procedure seem inevitable. That's the advantage of falling in a hospital. You need not worry about any delays in emergency assistance. My sister nodded, but then sighed, losing her appetite. Mom, why am I so unfortunate? Others have multiple miscarriages and still give birth, yet I can't even get pregnant after one. The Sioux family will surely reject me now. My mother placed another piece of steak in my sister's mouth. Come now. Darling, you must learn to accept reality. So, what if you cannot have children? So, what if you are not accepted into the Sioux family? Your sister will earn a living for us. We will remain beautiful and live well. Even if you never marry, there are plenty of men out there. If you desire one, you shall have one. My sister still seemed uneasy. But what if my sister cannot come tomorrow? I cannot afford any further delays. The doctor warned me that if I do not proceed, the toxins will harm me. My mother reassured my sister, do not worry. I have pressed her, and she is guaranteed she will come. She has never failed to fulfill her promises to us. My sister was finally at ease, poised to pick up her knife and fork once more, when Su Ming abruptly burst in from outside, raising her hand to slap my sister across the face. You wretched woman! The fetus has already stopped developing, yet you deceive my son into believing everything is fine. Go and terminate the pregnancy at once, lest you burden my son with 2 lives lost. My mother leaped forward to shield my sister, grappling with Su Ming. What do you think you are? How dare you strike my daughter? I will not stand for this. Su Ming's two female bodyguards struggled mightily to separate the two spirited middle-aged women. Once they were pulled apart, both were disheveled and disarrayed. Nevertheless, Su Ming had no intention of sparing Shen Lian. She commanded her bodyguards to escort Shen Lian away. It was painfully obvious where they were headed, towards an abortion. The cessation of the fetus was indeed a reason for termination, and Su Ming's actions, while coarse, were justifiable both morally and logically. Even if reported, it was unlikely she would face consequences. I poured myself a glass of wine and raised it towards the surveillance screen. How delightful. Tomorrow, I would not have to accompany Shen Lian to her prenatal checkup. I would not be liable for the life of her fetus. Moreover, her lifelong infertility would not be my burden to bear. However, I had no intention of letting her or my mother off the hook. If they believed that their cunning could outmatch my steadfastness, akin to my father's naivety, they were gravely mistaken. My inability to see through their schemes was not due to ignorance. Rather, I prioritized familial ties above all else. Now, with those ties set aside, their machinations would become glaringly evident. Furthermore, since I was my mother's child, how could I lack a touch of the sinister gene? Let the games of mutual harm begin. My mother called, but I didn't answer. In the surveillance feed, she was seen angrily berating, "Damn you, Lin Weishi. Don't let me discover your involvement in this." Indeed, in my mother's eyes, I could never rival the child she had with her first love, despite the torment he had inflicted upon her. I shrugged, dismissing her ire. What did it matter if she knew of my involvement? As long as I rejected her emotional blackmail, she remained a fragile woman devoid of substance in my eyes. Besides, I was confident she would not dare to confront me, considering I was her financial pillar. Without me, she lacked the standing to flaunt herself before her former lover's wife. Regardless, that woman was a genuine mid-level bank officer. While my mother had little to offer aside from my financial support, my grandmother had repeatedly instructed me before her passing to provide only living expenses for my mother and to withhold any additional funds. I had initially thought this was merely a natural conflict between a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, hence I did not adhere strictly to her wishes. In retrospect, my grandmother was undoubtedly the wisest in our family. Thankfully, I inherited her shrewdness. I contacted the financial director, instructing her to immediately freeze all bank cards belonging to my mother and sister. When my mother failed to reach me, she decided to pursue Su Ming. I dispatched a private investigator to track Su Ming's movements. Over an hour later, the investigator informed me that my sister had been taken by Su Ming to a private hospital under the Su family's name and had already been wheeled into the operating room. The investigator also reported that my mother had arrived and was now arguing with Su Ming at the surgical door. After yet another hour, the investigator reported back that the procedure had been completed. Su Ming had handed my sister a check and instructed that both she and my mother be returned to the villa. Throughout this time, my mother had attempted to call me numerous times, but I remained unresponsive. She sent a flurry of messages cursing me, questioning whether I had caused Shen Lian's miscarriage. Once I confirmed via the home surveillance that my mother and sister were indeed at the villa, I finally called my mother back. "Mom, my phone was lost. I just recovered it after reporting it to the police. What do you need?" My mother was panting, clearly suppressing her fury. "Your sister was coerced into an abortion by Su Ming. You must be honest with me. Was this your doing? How could it be such a coincidence that you were to accompany her for her checkup today and Su Ming caused a scene?" I promptly denied it, Mom. "How could you think that of me? What benefit would I gain from my sister's miscarriage?" I feigned astonishment. Is Su Ming truly capable of such wickedness? Did you report this? If not, I will. I had never deceived my mother, and she immediately believed my words. No need. Su Ming wields far greater power than you realize. Reporting it would be futile. Hurry over, so we can discuss what to do next. She feared that reporting it would reveal that my sister had discovered her pregnancy was not viable the previous week. I drove back to the villa where my sister, upon seeing me, immediately cried, "Cece, the Su family despises me for carrying a daughter and forced me to terminate the pregnancy. The doctor said my uterine wall is thin, and I may never conceive again. How am I to live with this?" I rolled my eyes internally. She was barely 10 weeks pregnant. How could the gender even be determined? Yet I maintain my facade of concern. Su Ming has gone too far. I will help you report her and expose her in the media. My mother struck me lightly. You foolish girl. Your sister has suffered enough. How would making this public benefit her? I smirked inwardly, but feigned humility. What does that mean, Mom? My mother raised an eyebrow, adopting a venomous tone. No matter how much you scream, the child cannot be brought back. Besides, Su-Ming looks down on your sister precisely because she lacks a proper job. So, why not have your sister take up a vice presidential position at the company? With a title and money, even if she cannot bear children, there will be plenty of men eager to pursue her, and you need not worry about her future. My sister, like my mother, was extraordinarily beautiful, yet equally vain. She had always aspired to be a star but could not gain admission to the film academy and could not endure the hardship of minor roles, leaving her a perpetual idler. My mother had originally intended to use my sister's halted pregnancy to entrap me, ensuring I would be indebted to them for life. However, with the fetus gone, my mother had no choice but to force my sister into my company for my support. Fine. I did not outright refuse. Instead, I agreed foolishly. Just as I had in the past, once you finish your recovery, come work at my company. I planned to reveal the surveillance footage and confront them before their hopes could soar, shattering their fantasies and driving them away. When my grandmother was alive, my mother had constantly urged my father to secure my sister a cushy position at the company, but my grandmother had scolded him, "If she comes in, you can leave." Now that my grandmother had passed, my mother's ambitions had reignited. Seeing my compliance, my mother beamed with delight and, while my attention was diverted, subtly raised an eyebrow at my sister, as if to say, "See, your sister is so naive, easily manipulated." Noticing my mother's elation, I smiled and added, "Oh, by the way, I had all your cards frozen." My mother's eyes widened, ready to reprimand me, but I raised a hand to signal her to let me finish. "I dreamt of Grandma last night. She was furious and warned me that if I continued to allow you both to squander money, she would take our family of 3 with her. I wasn't meeting a client tonight. I was consulting a master. The master said I must heed my grandmother's wishes, or else our family will indeed face calamity." My mother was incensed. "Your grandmother is unbelievable. Even in death, she meddles." My sister, however, was more concerned about financial matters. "Did the master say when we can have our cards back?" I sighed in annoyance. I had already asked the master, who said it would be at least until the Zhongyuan festival next year. At that time, he would summon my grandmother's spirit to take a talisman for her, ensuring she could no longer enter my dreams, and only then could I restore your cards. Is the master you consulted truly reliable? My mother could not bear the thought of a year without spending freely. Should I help you find another master? I quickly waved my hand. Is there anyone in Haicheng more powerful than Master Yue? He is the pinnacle of the metaphysical realm here. Though I do not know him personally, it does not prevent me from leveraging his name for influence. My mother immediately pouted, speechless. I had thought that by allowing my sister to join the company as vice president, my mother and sister would find some peace for a while. However, just a week after her miscarriage, my sister called, expressing a longing for the cuisine at Wengguolu. Yet, my mother had caught a cold, and my sister insisted that I accompany her. My intuition warned me that this meal was likely a trap. Nevertheless, considering my sister's empty stomach and my reluctance to harm myself, alongside my promise to her that I would join the company after her confinement, I was curious about what scheme she might have in store. Thus, I decided to attend. I brought along 2 bodyguards and concealed recording devices for my own safety. My sister had reserved a private room and seemed unbothered by the presence of my bodyguards. She behaved impeccably, showing no signs of ulterior motives. However, as long as we remained in that room, I dared not relax my vigilance. As anticipated, when the fruit was served after the meal, a sudden thud echoed from the adjacent room, as if someone had collided with the wall. My first thought was that there was a fight next door. Yet my sister, with excitement glimmering in her eyes, asserted confidently, "That's the sound of a wall slam." I was left speechless. Then came the unmistakable sound of a woman's moan from next door, loud and deliberate. My sister was even more animated, exclaiming, "They're definitely having an affair." I silently observed her, attempting to analyze how this clandestine rendezvous might negatively affect me. The comments from the online audience clarified my perplexity. "Darling, the man next door is your fiancé. To clarify, yes, it is your fiancé, but he has been set up." And even in a fit of rage, he kicked that woman against the wall. Those thuds were the sounds of her being thrown. The moans were from her being brutally hurt. Darling, this is your sister's doing. She fears that after your marriage, you want to support her and your mother, so she's plotting to ruin your engagement. She arranged a dinner with your fiancé, but deliberately misled him about the room number. Then she would have a woman masquerading as a waitress slip him a drug and create a scandal. At the crucial moment, your sister would bring you in to catch them in the act. Afterwards, she would feign ignorance about the room mix-up, claiming it was meant to be a surprise. Sweetheart, you must believe in your fiancé. He is a good man. Xiao Fei is a good man? I utterly disagreed. Xiao Fei was the fiancé my grandmother had arranged for me before her passing. The Xiao family operated a century-old restaurant which, despite being quite successful, paled in comparison to our family's business. This was irrelevant compared to the fact that Xiao Fei was a reckless gambler, a womanizer, a complete wastrel. If not for my grandmother's insistence, I would have never considered him. She had claimed a fortune-teller had matched our destinies perfectly. Following our reluctant engagement, I had never met Xiao Fei alone, and his entry in my contacts merely read trash. I awaited the 100th day after my grandmother's death to sever our engagement. I had no faith in superstitions. The fortune-teller's words held no sway over me. While I was still immersed in my disdain for Xiao Fei, my sister suddenly exclaimed, "Oh, dear, that sound next door seems to be Xiao Fei. Let us go take a look." Indeed, while I was momentarily stunned, a man's booming voice from next door shouted, "Get lost." Just from that single note, my sister could deduce it was Xiao Fei. She truly was transparent. I allowed her to pull me next door, where she knocked twice, and the door swung open immediately. A disheveled waitress, upon seeing her, leapt forward like a damsel in distress, crying, "Help me. This man is trying to assault me." My sister, channeling her inner hero, kicked the door wide open. I caught sight of Xiao Fei, his face flushed, pouring ice from a wine bucket over his head. Our eyes met, and he panicked. "Lin Weishi, it's not what you think. You've earned your notorious reputation, and now you still have the audacity to deny it. How can you face my sister?" My sister charged forward, raising her hand to slap Xiao Fei, but I swiftly grasped her wrist. With my other hand, I quickly dialed the police, determined to heed their authority. My sister attempted to snatch my phone, but I evaded her grasp, leaving her to watch as I reported the incident. I instructed my bodyguards to detain the waitress until the police arrived, then I drove Xiao Fei to the hospital by myself. My sister berated me for being infatuated, adamantly forbidding me from going, but I pushed past her. The police called to inform me that the waitress had admitted to having ulterior motives, taking full responsibility for drugging Xiao Fei. Upon hearing this, he gave a wry smile, saying, "You'll surely blame me for being set up by your sister." I shot him a cold glance. If you could be outsmarted by my sister, then it was your own fault. In truth, I felt a pang of guilt for scolding him, considering I had also been at the mercy of my sister's machinations for 22 years. Yet, I pushed such thoughts aside, focusing on releasing my pent-up frustration. One must squeeze soft persimmons, a lesson learned from my mother. Xiao Fei fell silent, no longer arguing. After staying with him for the night to ensure his well-being, I stood to take my leave, stating, "Next month, let us call off our engagement. If you wish to do so sooner, simply inform me, and I will arrange for the marriage contract and engagement gifts to be returned to your family." Xiao Fei seemed unsurprised by my declaration, only requesting, "Given that you helped fulfill my grandmother's wish, could we postpone the dissolution of our engagement for another 6 months?" I agreed, without asking why. After all, I had no plans for romance at present, and having an inexplicable engagement would spare me from being set up on blind dates by my grandmother's friends. As for my sister's drugging of Xiao Fei, I had yet to devise a plan for revenge when my mother decided to stir up trouble again. Following that incident, I hired a private investigator to monitor my mother and sister daily. The investigator informed me that my mother was involved with a private equity manager named Zhou Yuan. In the covert footage, I saw Zhou Yuan promising my mother that if I signed a betting agreement, he could ensure my company as listing on Nasdaq, elevating my wealth to the top 10 in Haicheng. My mother gazed at Zhou Yuan with starry eyes, clearly smitten. I found it perplexing. Zhou Yuan appeared to be just a few years older than me. Was my mother really pursuing a younger man? The investigator swiftly dispelled my doubts, revealing that Zhou Yuan was the son of my mother's first love. It was absurd. After enduring such heartache from her first love, she was now enamored with his son. Thanks to the investigator's reminder, I recalled that Zhou Yuan had accompanied executives from his company during a brief visit to me. I had met them for only a few minutes and had outright rejected their betting agreement on the spot. My grandmother's dying wish was for the company not to go public, and I would not betray that promise. Moreover, that private equity firm had a notorious reputation. I would never collaborate with such a company. Besides, those two men seemed polished but had shifty eyes, always evading direct questions, clearly unreliable. I never anticipated that one of the untrustworthy individuals would be the son of my mother's lifelong crush. Knowing that my mother would undoubtedly try to brainwash me after meeting Zhou Yuan, I decided to avoid the villa altogether, opting instead for a spacious apartment near the company. To prevent my mother from harassing me, I even had her access card deactivated and changed the password on my door lock. However, I underestimated my mother's obsession with money and her infatuation with her first love. She stormed into the company looking for me. The front desk, following my instructions, informed her that I was not present, yet my mother cleverly thought to check the underground parking lot for my car. Upon spotting my vehicle, she realized I was avoiding her and kicked the tire, triggering the alarm. Clutching a document bag that I could only assume contained the betting agreement, I watched this unfold on the surveillance feed, laughing in disbelief. Knowing I could not evade her any longer, I instructed someone to escort my mother to my office. Upon entering, she immediately unleashed a torrent of reproaches. Lin Weishi, are you out of your mind? You won't even see your own mother. What on earth are you trying to do? I maintained my composure, asking, what is it that you so urgently need to discuss with me? My mother, fearing that a harsh reprimand would drive me away, hastily donned a facade of cheerfulness and presented me with a betting agreement. The individual involved was the child of an old friend, someone deemed quite reliable. She insisted that I could sign it with complete confidence. I casually perused the document and, unsurprisingly, it was riddled with traps. Signing it would amount to selling the company at a pittance. Mother, do you even grasp the concept of a betting agreement? I asked, suppressing my frustration, simultaneously offering her one last chance. If she could comprehend my concerns and reject this agreement, vowing to refrain from meddling in my business affairs, I believed I might still provide for her in her later years. Yet my mother disappointed me profoundly. She shot me an exasperated glance and retorted, "Humph, don't treat your mother like a fool. Of course, I understand what a bet entails. There are risks involved. But this person is different. He is the child of my old friend, and certainly would not let us suffer losses. Once the company goes public and our assets multiply, you will be the one reveling in success. Only you and my sister will be celebrating, won't you? With an abundance of wealth, your extravagance will know no bounds. I, a mere recluse who delights in watching sunrises and sunsets, find no meaning in vast sums of money." I pierced through my mother's facade. "Is it merely because he is the son of your former lover that you deem this venture viable?" My mother's expression shifted awkwardly, yet her resolve remained unshaken. "That is but one factor. Ultimately, I wish for your career to soar to greater heights." "How heartless you are." I angrily flung the agreement onto the table, stating unequivocally, "This contract is a trap. Signing it equates to selling the company for a pittance. By then, don't expect to make more money. We might even have to sell our villa to pay off debts. Do you truly want me to sign this agreement?" My mother paused for a mere second before launching into a tirade. "Do not alarm me with your doomsday rhetoric. No wonder Zhou Yuan told me you are excessively conservative, prone to exaggerating difficulties and stagnating in your progress. I ought to counsel you better. You are truly a hopeless case. If so, perhaps your sister should take your place. She possesses far greater resolve." I was left utterly speechless, leaning back in my chair, quietly observing my mother. She had never witnessed my cold demeanor before, so she quickly softened, poured me a glass of water, and said, Now, let us not take the words spoken in anger to heart. A mother speaks out of love for her child." The comments flooded in. "Darling, do not drink that glass of water. Your mother has spiked it with a hallucinogen. She will summon her former lover's son to have you sign the betting agreement while you are under the influence. Indeed, they might even record it as evidence, leaving you with no defense." A chill ran through me as I set the glass down, lifting my gaze to meet my mother's. "All right, I understand. You may leave now. I will consider the agreement further." My mother once again extended the glass toward me, insisting, "How about this? Take a sip of the water I poured for you to prove you are not angry. and then I will go. If you do not leave, I shall pour the water on your face." I glared at her, contemplating the act. However, executing such a deed would only heighten her wariness, complicating my recently devised plan for revenge. Thus, I opted merely to intimidate her. Sensing my genuine anger, she hurriedly poured the water into a flower pot, exclaiming, all right. Do not be upset. I shall leave now." Not long after her departure, a private investigator sent me photographs. As soon as she descended the stairs, my mother met with Zhou Yuan, her gaze towards him far softer than it had ever been towards me. The investigator also reported that my mother had assured Zhou Yuan she would indeed sign the betting agreement. I rested my forehead in my palm, feeling a strong urge to execute the revenge plan I had conceived earlier. Yet, the bloodiness of it made me hesitate. I switched on the home surveillance system, hoping to find something that would soften my heart. In the living room, upon seeing my mother return home, my sister rushed over to inquire, "Did my sister sign?" To my astonishment, she was also in the know. My mother, irritated, kicked off her shoes, remarking, "It seems your sister doesn't intend to support us any longer. She must have learned something. The halted card must not have been the result of her dreams, otherwise, she would not have so resolutely refused today." The two moved to the dining room for water, and my mother suddenly declared with a menacing tone, "Your sister cannot be allowed to live." My sister trembled, asking, "Mother, are you truly willing to go that far?" My mother waved her hand impatiently. "If we do not act first, your sister will eventually make our lives unbearable." I could not help but applaud my mother's insight. Indeed, no one knows a daughter better than her mother. On the surveillance, my sister cautiously probed, "What do you plan to do?" My mother casually responded, "Just a little dairy product." Her tone was as relaxed as if she were discussing a trivial matter. I am severely allergic to dairy products. As a child, I accidentally drank a dairy-containing beverage and nearly suffocated to death from throat swelling. My sister appeared somewhat alarmed, but her words chilled me further. What if she does not die? My mother gently patted my sister's face. "As long as we delay rescue, she will suffer from oxygen deprivation. Even if she survives, she will be left a fool. By then, you will be the president of the company." Upon witnessing this exchange, my expression turned icy. Such a mother could not be allowed to remain. And that sister, too, must be dealt with. My plan for revenge no longer warranted hesitation. I feigned a gift for my elders, fearing they might refuse it, and funded a travel agency friend to present my mother's former lover's family with complimentary overseas travel vouchers, claiming they had won the agency's grand prize for purchasing tickets. To ensure the family of 3 would embark on their journey, I instructed my friend to stipulate that the vouchers were non-refundable and non-transferable, as they were ordinary wage earners. The nearly 200,000 yuan prize was something none of them could afford to relinquish, thus they set off as scheduled. Observing the overseas travel photos of my mother's first love's family shared by my friend, my mother became anxious, temporarily setting aside her schemes against me. She demanded access to her bank card, insisting she too wanted to travel abroad. Reluctantly, I acquiesced, allowing her to take my sister along for a change of scenery. The two departed in high spirits. True to form, my mother pursued her former lover's path, which conveniently aided my plans. 3 days later, I received a call from the police informing me that my mother and sister had gone missing overseas, along with Zhou Yuan. The report had been filed by Zhou Yuan's parents. 2 days later, I received a call from my mother, stating that she and my sister had been deceived and stranded in Southeast Asia, pleading for my help. Before she could finish, the call was abruptly cut off. Naturally, I had no intention of rescuing them. After investing so much money to entice her former lover's family abroad and, subsequently, spending even more to have them sold to a Southeast Asian sweatshop while luring Zhou Yuan to northern Myanmar, how could I possibly come to their aid? Yet, to clear my name, I still reported their disappearance to the authorities. However, it was merely a report. The police could only relay the matter to local agencies for assistance in such a transnational missing persons case. As for the locals, they had long grown accustomed to such occurrences and hardly bothered with any requests for assistance. Without my unscrupulous mother and sister nearby, without any treacherous individuals plotting against my company, my life became simple and tranquil. I sold the villa and resided alone in a spacious flat, enjoying the stunning sunset from the floor-to-ceiling windows in blissful solitude. 6 months later, a sensational news story broke. A domestic technology company had gone public on Nasdaq, with none other than Xiao Fei ringing the bell as the founder. Upon seeing the news image of Xiao Fei, looking quite distinguished in a black suit, I was nearly beside myself. He had always struck me as a societal misfit. How had he suddenly transformed into an outstanding elite? The message he sent me provided an explanation. This message took me longer to compose and delete than the Nasdaq roadshow itself. The family restaurant has been passed down for a century. As the sole heir, failing to inherit it would be a sin. My entrepreneurial endeavors have been viewed as a rebellion, leading to continuous suppression from them. I could only play the role of a social outcast, compelling them to abandon me, thus allowing me to clandestinely pursue my entrepreneurial aspirations. I apologize for dragging you into this charade. My fear lies not in familial oppression, but in the possibility that you might believe the performance and genuinely turn away. The family-owned restaurant is not without merit, yet it merely represents the glory of our forebears. What I yearn to create is a realm that bears both our names, a domain uniquely ours. Therefore, I implore you, do not annul our engagement. If you would be so kind, grant me a chance, and I shall repay you with the entirety of the stars and oceans in the future, as compensation for involving you in this play. Is that agreeable? To be candid, while the information provided elucidated matters, the depth of sentiment therein left me feeling disconcerted. I perceived that, apart from our emotionless engagement ceremony, I had no connection with him. I felt unworthy of such profound affection. Thus, I replied, I apologize.
But you unsettle me.
Have you perhaps mistaken me for another woman? The trope of misidentifying a benefactor is one I have encountered frequently in my idle moments. Xiao Fei quickly sent a photograph. Upon closer inspection, it was an image from 2 years prior, capturing a moment when I performed CPR on a girl following a car accident. A vehicle had overturned off the road and into the riverbank, and my friends and I, fortuitously nearby, rushed to render aid. Confused, I texted back, "What is your connection to the girl? How could one offer themselves so willingly?" Xiao Fei promptly responded, "I must apologize. I am, in fact, the perpetrator. My motorcycle malfunctioned, and I stopped in a blind spot. When that car overturned, I realized my location and how it had caused the driver to panic and lose control. You performed CPR for nearly 40 minutes, saving that girl and alleviating my conscience for life. Therefore, please accept my belated gratitude." I retorted, "So, your expression of gratitude manifests as a betrayal, culminating in our engagement?" Xiao Fei sent a flustered emoji. No. I only agreed to the engagement at my grandmother's behest. Upon discovering you were the heroine who saved a life, I felt an exhilarating sense of destined connection. If you truly wish to withdraw, I assure you I will not persist. However, I hope you might take the time to know me better before making a decision. I remained perplexed. Did you cast some spell upon my grandmother? How else could she have been so misguided as to favor a social miscreant? Xiao Fei replied, "My grandmother is my investor and has assisted me in concealing my family's affairs. Her sole stipulation is that I marry you. She possesses remarkable insight. When I was ready to abandon the project, she insisted it would succeed, and indeed, it has. Surely, my grandmother cannot be mistaken in her judgment. Why not trust her just this once?" After pondering, I replied, "I shall consider your suggestion." 6 months later, I and Xiao Fei obtained our marriage certificate. The swift and fateful turn of events felt like something out of a novel or film, a reality I had never indulged in, as I sought a life where we laid our aspirations bare and discovered ambitions beyond mere romantic entanglements. We both desired to become the best versions of ourselves for one another. After 6 months of companionship, I was certain that Xiao Fei was the one I sought. Upon exiting the registry office, I received a phone call from the police, informing me that a sweatshop had been dismantled in a Southeast Asian country, and 2 individuals matched the identities I had reported. Sadly, one was near death, while the other had succumbed to madness. I personally flew there, with Xiao Fei by my side. The one on the verge of death was my mother. She appeared emaciated. When I saw her, she could no longer utter a word. I grasped her hand and whispered in her ear, "I am sorry. It is all my doing, but I harbor no regrets. Seeing me embody the same ruthlessness as you, perhaps you can find solace in the afterlife." My mother gazed at me with wide eyes, shock overwhelming her as she took her last breath. My sister had completely lost her sanity. She did not recognize me and continuously demanded I buy her necklaces, handbags, and rings. I brought her back to our country and placed her in a psychiatric facility. With no nefarious individuals to disrupt my life, I embarked on a smooth journey, living immensely joyfully alongside Xiao Fei. The end of the tale. Thank you for listening, and until we meet again in the next story.